We stole the Statue of Liberty, the small one from Las Vegas. Listen up, please.
Shrink ray?
I hate that guy. You will not cry, or sneeze, or burp, or fart.
When Despicable Me arrived in 2010, it didn't just introduce audiences to another animated comedy. It quietly launched a cultural phenomenon built around an unlikely villain, an army of chaotic yellow helpers, and a surprisingly tender story about family. On the surface, the premise sounded absurd in the best possible way. A supervillain plotting to steal the moon. Not rob a bank, not conquer a country, but literally steal the moon from the sky. Yet what made the film resonate wasn't simply the scale of its central heist. It was the emotional transformation buried underneath the gadgets, the gags, and the grandiosity. The story opens in a pristine suburban neighborhood, all white picket fences and blooming rose bushes, the kind of place where nothing seems out of order. In the middle of this picture-perfect setting stands a single black house with a dead, cracked lawn, immediately signaling that something or someone inside doesn't quite fit. Beneath that gloomy exterior lies a vast underground lair filled with cutting-edge machinery, secret laboratories, and rows upon rows of loyal minions. This is the domain of Gru, voiced with icy confidence and comedic precision by Steve Carell. Gru is a self-proclaimed supervillain, proud of his legacy of misdeeds and determined to cement his name in the history books of evil. At the beginning of the film, Gru's reputation is under threat. A younger, flashier villain has just stolen the Great Pyramid of Giza and replaced it with an inflatable replica, an act so brazen and theatrical that it instantly overshadows Gru's previous accomplishments. In the competitive world of supervillainy, spectacle matters, and Gru feels himself slipping into irrelevance. His solution is not modest. He decides to outdo every villain in existence by shrinking the moon and stealing it, pulling off what he calls the greatest heist in history. To execute this outrageous plan, Gru relies on his brilliant but eccentric scientist, Dr. Nefario, and an army of tireless minions. The minions, small yellow creatures with goggles and childlike enthusiasm, provide much of the film's slapstick humor. They are endlessly devoted to Gru, even when his schemes put them in ridiculous or dangerous situations. Their language is a playful mashup of sounds and multilingual fragments, and their physical comedy, tripping, cheering, overreacting, gives the film a constant pulse of energy. At the time of release, no one could have predicted just how iconic these characters would become, but even in this first outing, their appeal is undeniable. Gru's plan hinges on acquiring a shrink ray, a device capable of reducing objects to tiny proportions. However, in a world where supervillains operate like corporate rivals, access to funding and technology flows through the bank of evil. When Gru pitches his moon-stealing idea, he's met with skepticism, especially after the recent success of his younger competitor, Vector. Vector is everything Gru is not: smug, tech-savvy, and aggressively modern. He operates out of a high-tech fortress bristling with defenses and delights in taunting Gru at every opportunity. Their rivalry becomes the engine that drives much of the plot, transforming the moon heist into a personal battle for validation. Gru manages to steal the shrink ray, but Vector quickly outmaneuvers him and takes it back, sealing it inside his heavily fortified home. Direct confrontation proves impossible, so Gru observed something crucial. 3 orphaned girls, Margo, Edith, and Agnes, are able to enter Vector's house freely to sell cookies. In a calculated move that reveals both Gru's cunning and his moral blind spots, he adopts the girls with the sole intention of using them to infiltrate Vector's lair and retrieve the shrink ray. The arrival of the girls marks the film's emotional turning point. Margo, the eldest, is cautious and protective. Edith, the middle child, is mischievous and fearless. Agnes, the youngest, is pure-hearted and obsessed with unicorns. Initially, Gru views them as tools, temporary assets in a larger operation. He installs them in his house with minimal warmth, establishes rigid rules, and maintains his emotional distance. Yet the dynamic quickly begins to shift. The girls, starved for affection, respond to even the smallest gestures of attention. They see in Gru not a villain, but a potential father figure. What unfolds from this setup is a surprisingly tender exploration of redemption. Gru's life, previously defined by ambition and resentment, begins to change under the influence of these children. Small moments accumulate: reading a bedtime story, attending a dance recital rehearsal, enduring the chaos of breakfast time. Each interaction chips away at his hardened exterior. The film takes care not to rush this transformation. Gru resists it, often comically. He insists he is not a dad, that he has no time for recitals or stuffed animals, but the audience sees what he cannot, that he is already emotionally invested. Meanwhile, the moon heist accelerates toward execution. With the shrink ray back in his possession, Gru finalizes his plan. The minions train for the mission, gadgets are tested, and the rocket is prepared. Yet the more time Gru spends with the girls, the more his priorities begin to conflict. A key moment arrives when the girls invite him to attend their ballet recital, scheduled for the same night as the moon launch. Gru chooses the heist. In doing so, he appears to revert to his old self, chasing glory over connection. The disappointment on the girls' faces underscores the emotional stakes more powerfully than any action sequence. The moon heist itself is staged with grand, playful spectacle. Gru successfully shrinks the moon and brings it back to Earth, achieving what no villain before him has accomplished. For a brief moment, he stands at the pinnacle of his ambitions, but triumph feels hollow. Watching the girls perform via a recorded broadcast, he realizes what he has sacrificed. The heist, once the ultimate goal, suddenly feels insignificant compared to the bond he has formed with his adopted daughters. This internal shift culminates in the film's climax. Vector kidnaps the girls, seeking revenge and leverage. Faced with the ultimate test, Gru abandons his claim to the moon without hesitation. He returns it to the sky, undoing his greatest achievement in order to save the children. In narrative terms, this is the completion of his arc. The villain who once sought validation through destruction now finds purpose through protection. The act is not framed as a defeat, but as a victory of character. Visually, the film balances exaggerated character designs with detailed environments. Gru's elongated silhouette contrasts sharply with Vector's rounded, cartoonish shape, reinforcing their personalities through design. The suburban setting grounds the absurdity of the plot, making the underground lair and lunar mission feel even more surreal by comparison. The animation style, distinct from other studios at the time, favors bold expressions and kinetic slapstick, allowing comedic beats to land with precision. Beyond its central story, the film subtly satirizes corporate culture and generational rivalry. The Bank of Evil, complete with its tongue-in-cheek slogan, treats villainy like a business sector. Loans, presentations, and competition mirror real-world entrepreneurial pressures. Gru's insecurity about being replaced by a younger, trendier villain reflects broader anxieties about relevance and legacy. These thematic layers give the film texture beyond its family-friendly surface. Music also plays a key role in shaping the film's tone. The soundtrack blends playful orchestral cues with energetic pop influences, reinforcing both the comedic and emotional beats. Songs associated with the minions amplify their chaotic charm, while softer melodies underscore Gru's gradual softening. The musical choices help bridge the tonal shifts between absurd comedy and heartfelt drama. Upon its release, the film distinguished itself in a crowded animation landscape. Rather than centering on a traditionally heroic protagonist, it invited audiences to root for a self-proclaimed villain. This inversion of perspective gave the narrative freshness. Gru's moral journey felt earned because it began from such a starkly selfish place. The adoption plotline could have been saccharine, but it avoids that pitfall by allowing humor and vulnerability to coexist. The cultural impact of the film quickly extended beyond the screen. The Minions, with their simple design and universal physical comedy, became breakout stars. Their image spread across merchandise, memes, and eventually their own spin-off films. Yet, it is worth remembering that their origin lies within this first story, where they function not merely as comic relief, but as a reflection of Gru's leadership. They adore him unconditionally, even when he is at his worst, highlighting the contrast between loyalty and emotional distance. In retrospect, the enduring appeal of the film stems from its clarity of theme. At its heart, it asks a simple question: what truly defines greatness? Is it the scale of one's accomplishments or the depth of one's relationships? Gru begins the story believing that stealing the moon will secure his place in history. He ends it understanding that being present for 3 little girls matters far more. The moon, once a symbol of ultimate ambition, becomes secondary to the warmth of a bedtime story and a shared laugh. By the final scenes, the black house with the dead lawn no longer feels ominous. It feels lived in, transformed by laughter and love. Gru's voice, once dripping with sarcastic menace, carries genuine affection. The Minions celebrate not a heist, but a family. The neighborhood remains the same on the surface, white fences and blooming roses, but beneath that once secret lair, something fundamental has changed. The film closes on a note of earned optimism. Gru does not renounce his entire identity overnight. Traces of his mischievous edge remain, but he is no longer driven by insecurity or rivalry. He has discovered a new purpose, one that reframes his intelligence and ambition towards something constructive. For viewers, especially younger audiences, this message resonates clearly. People are not fixed in their roles. Even a villain can choose a different path. Years later, the legacy of Despicable Me continues to influence animated storytelling in popular culture. It demonstrated that commercial animation could balance irreverent humor with genuine emotional arcs, that spectacle could coexist with sincerity. More importantly, it proved that sometimes the most extraordinary transformation isn't stealing the moon, it's learning how to love.